Hey, hey, how's it
Hey,
going, man?
hey.
Hey, hey,
Good, you?
good. Yeah, we're back for episode two. The series has landed. Um, I suppose we'll start this off. I have a couple of ideas from the beginning of this episode. This is near the end of season one, I guess, of Futurama, right? The uh, the show stops producing those cold opens, right? Like you have like a little bit of
Oh,
a
like the
thing that
first
connects,
minute and a half is
right?
like
Exactly. Like it
good
doesn't connect
news,
to
everyone.
anything, right? Yeah, and he shows like something. So this was like the first, well, the second time I guess, because the first one had it as well, but this one obviously is an actual cold open. So we there, and it's with the delivery company commercial, right? With the professor showing these guys, and he's like, if your delivery is important, but our crew isn't, like it's expendable, and
I do
all
also
this
like the
stuff.
fact
Yeah,
is I paid to have it aired during the Super Bowl. Oh wow, not on the same channel, of
channel,
course.
right? So this plays off this other thing, right? In the future, however Super Bowls that is, I guess it's like thousand and some. That
I
means the
don't know. I
Super
don't
Bowl is
follow
still
football.
so popular that people will continue watching
Still
it and
watch it,
everything,
yeah.
right? So I thought that was always just so fantastic. There's always these great ideas for it. But yeah, what do you think about this cold open? And do you miss that Futurama doesn't really do these cold openings as much?
Well, my guess, and this is just a guess here, so it kind of all goes all the way back to Looney Tunes with animators and stuff like that. Like
Right,
animators had a lot more to do with the ideas and like little jokes and stuff like that. And there wasn't really there might have been just kind of like, okay, we want Bugs Bunny to do this during the episode. This is the direction he fights Elmer Fudd and then he wins in the end.
right.
These little cold openings and stuff like that. I wonder if it was the same kind of thing, like an animator or maybe even just like a writer came up to Matt Groening or whoever was had say in this,
Right. The
be like,
writing of
hey,
it, yeah.
I have an idea and stuff like that. And they're like, you know what, cool, let me hear it. Boom, here's the idea. Okay, cool.
It
See
doesn't
if we
fit
can
the
break it
episode,
down to be
right?
like
Yeah,
30 seconds to like a minute and a half or something like that,
right.
and boom, there you go. And
Sure.
maybe that's what the cold openings were, because I don't know, because like it does fit in the world and stuff like that. Maybe there was like a hey Trisha, you're a new writer right here, I want to see your chops here, write a little blurb for this, like a
Right.
little like a cold opening and stuff like that, because we don't really get cold openings anymore in
With
cinema and
most
stuff like
with
that.
most shows, yeah. Yeah.
The Office did, of course, and those were generally always the funniest.
Yeah, that's right.
Usually, it was always like a prank on Dwight by Jim or something like that, or Michael Scott being
Michael
stupidly
Scott,
funny.
right? But that
Yeah,
was something interesting about those cold opens from that show, right? Is that it kind of led
that
into the main theme of what
yeah,
the episode was about. The Futurama ones, they don't. They have like
not
no
all of them.
no
No,
real connection, right? Like this one, the delivery company commercial, which is
it's the beginning of the series, so kind of
funny,
like,
yeah,
hey,
yeah.
this
Like
is
what
what
is this
we
world?
do.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, that was something I even thought about too, because this is also the very first instance we have like horrible gelatinous blob
Oh,
shows
I
up.
love that. I like it on the
Yeah,
package because it was HG Blob,
right.
Mister HG Blob.
Blob,
So you don't know he's horribly or gelatinous. You just know him as Mister Blob.
Mr. Blob, and he's like a recurring character for a lot of things. Like
Oh
he
yeah,
shows up
yeah.
many times throughout the series, and he's just there, and he eats them and eats other people. Like he's always there doing
He's a
something, right?
gelatinous blob.
So
He's horrible.
I like how they use this character concept for a lot. Um, and then of course, like we have the whole thing ending in the giant bird, which doesn't really play anything, but then little joke on the side that they have giant birds in the future. And
Well,
I thought it was really good.
I like it because the professor is such a jerk, and he always like, I love it too, because like, oh hey, I have my old crew's career chips,
Yeah,
but they're like, when he opens up the envelope that they're in, it's like from contents from Wasp's stomach. So
right,
it's like something horrible. And this
right.
one, like Fry's like, hey, do they actually have giant birds? Oh no, they
No,
don't.
and then he's like
Anyone
baking
want some
giant.
eggs?
Yeah, the
So
the
I
idea
love
of
it, just to
human
kind of
life.
shows that he's a jerk.
Yeah, the idea of human life in the
Oh,
future is like very random. Like a lot of people don't care about real people anymore. That's kind of what the joke is, I think. It's just like, oh, everybody's expendable. We just do this for the money, or we do this kind of thing, right? But I guess when you have so many new races and planets and all this stuff. Maybe the human race becomes kind of like that to themselves. I don't know.
It's 1,000 years in the future. How
Could
many
be.
aliens have come down to Earth, have brought their animals and viruses, blah blah blah, all that fun stuff
Yeah.
that comes when you move a society over to a new place.
Right. Or you
So
incorporate so many other societies into it, right? Because
yeah,
it's no
exactly.
longer like human, even though Futurama still plays on this because it's still, playing off real world things. But like planet Earth is said to be like its own culture now, which is very much Americanized, right? Because they have like the Earthican flag and everything. But then, other cultures such as like who we'll find out in this episode, we'll meet for the first time, like Zoidberg, has a very
Zoidberg. Favorite character.
Exactly. Your favorite character shows up here. They have a very, crab-like society, obviously, because they're giant crabs. And they live in sand and they do this kind of stuff, and it's all very hilarious, right? So I don't know. I think the idea of the cultural ideas of the future of Futurama is kind of like depressing, but at the same time it makes for a fun joke, right? Because it takes the part out of it. But yeah, I guess we can move on now. So the main actual form of this episode is, of course, that Fry, Leela, and Bender, having been hired by the professor in the previous episode, they now get to go on their very first journey, their very first adventure, their very first delivery of only like 10 or 11 throughout the whole series. But they get to do these.
Yeah, they don't do many. they don't do many deliveries.
But then they get to do this, and of course, to do so, they have to meet the new crew, or sorry, I guess the old crew. The new crew has to meet like their new colleagues. So, Mitchell, can you do the audience a favor? Who are these new people that we're first introduced to in the Planet Express Delivery Company?
Well, we got the lovely Hermes, who is voiced by Phil Lamar, and he comes in and he's like the accountant or bureaucrat of the company, which I love. Yep. He's got a fun. They have a very fun way depicting bureaucracy in this series, and it's way better than real life.
Yes,
and it's also very accurate to real life too.
It's super accurate to real life, but it's so funny that he's this
very,
accountant,
very good.
Right? Yeah.
Then
so he's pretty cool.
They also have Amy Wong, who's played by Lauren Tom. She was Ross's girlfriend at one point in Friends, for those who don't know. She's an actress
way back in the second season.
Actress. I don't remember what it was. It was way back when.
A long time ago.
Oh yeah. Well, all the people in Friends are almost 60 years old. So.
If you want like other acting credits as well, like voice acting credits, like she's in a lot of animation, but one that was quite prominent was she was Terry McGinnis's girlfriend in Batman Beyond as well.
Oh,
she
played that. Love that series.
Yeah, so she was also.
I can't remember her name, but I know
her name's escaping me now. But yeah, she was a prominent character in the Batman Beyond series for that reason, which was going on
pretty much.
Yeah, well, it was going on exactly at the same time this episode was going on, right? 1999, 2000. That's when Batman Beyond was coming.
The height of television.
Yeah, good times. And then of course your favorite character rather.
All right, Zoidberg. Yeah, Zoidberg. He comes in. He's the doctor of the company. The thing that gets me though is like sidetracking from Zoidberg. That the whole reason why Fry, Leela, and Bender have a job is that it's a side thought to the professor that he wants to do a delivery business. He gets his money, I think, from grants and stuff like that, and from all his science conventions. But he also has a delivery company, which just doesn't make sense to me why he has one. But without it, we wouldn't get this whole series.
All this thing, right? Well, I think he himself is a scientist, right? But I think he's also like discredited. It's not really talked about, but he's still part of the science community and everything. Like he goes to all these places and he's still part of the university, but he's not. But he's not actually part of like the whole atmosphere, right? Exactly. Like he's too old in some ways for this kind of thing, but he still keeps all of his gear, all of his inventions. And I think the delivery company was kind of there to kind of fund that in a way.
I think he might have said that in the first episode.
So, and this is why he's gone through a couple of crews, right? So he's had it for quite a while. I think ever since he's probably, I mean, of course, we learned this later.
The professor's right. We're not as good as his old crew.
Yeah. I mean, like we learned this later in the series, of course, that he used to work for like the Mom's Robot Company, right? And this
Mom Corporation,
his background. But after I guess
we also learned that he invented a lot of things too, right?
For that company. Yeah.
well, there's an episode where with the near Death Star, I think that's what it's called, where they kind of do like here's what he's done in his life, and he
Right.
invented like the telescope, he invented robots, he invented hot women, something like
Right.
that.
Yeah, that's right. He designed them all from his own like
Yeah,
one bedroom apartment in wherever, right?
New
And I
New York.
and I think that, well, that was of course after, because then we learn more about his family life too, which it's there
Yeah,
might be a
he
continuity
would
issue.
sweat his bed. Yeah,
Right.
sweat.
Sweat. Anyway, getting off topic here for the
Yeah, sorry.
professor. But yes, the professor does this delivery company as a side thing because he wants to,
Get
make
some
some
money and
extra
stuff.
money from it. But then it's funny because the delivery company actually hemorrhages more money than it actually produces. So it is a funny concept in itself. Now, of course, yeah, Hermes being the company that runs it, Zoidberg, of course, is the company physician or the doctor, right, for the staff, despite the fact that he knows very little about human anatomy. And
He's a
then
great doctor for aliens. The problem is you're
aliens,
humans.
right, which isn't human. This always got me, actually. Humans are aliens to aliens, correct? So wouldn't that mean that
Correct.
he's also like, maybe he's just not a good doctor for any creature?
He's you know he came
He's
to
just a very
well my
bad doctor.
well it's a fun thought to think,
Yeah.
is a physician a doctor? Is
Well,
that an actual occupation on other planets, on alien planets and stuff like that?
well, I think it's led to believe it is, but you're right.
Again,
It's
it's
a
very
weird play on
Earth
words
oriented.
for it.
It's
Sure.
human orientated show, right?
Yeah.
Made by humans. Of course, everything's going to be like some human
Related,
concept or
right?
something like
We
that,
all
right?
speak English, including the French, right?
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
all there. Um, and then of course Amy Wong, who we also learn later, of course, of her life and
Amy
how she's
Wong of the
connected to
Wong
this.
Dynasty.
The Wong dynasty of Mars. Don't forget,
Mars of
they own the
Mars,
better
right?
part of Mars, rather. But Amy is only there because she's not part of the delivery crew. She is
Intern
she's an intern for the professor from his actual job, which is being the scientist, but for doing research. Like she's an
at
engineering
Mars. Yeah.
or Mars
Yeah, they do
University,
get
right?
into that.
Yeah.
He only teaches one class too, or something like that,
The
which is
class that
like
he
the
hates
weirdest
doing.
class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a class that he made so difficult that nobody ever chooses.
No
Or
one will
something,
take
right?
it. Yeah.
Of course, we learned that in Mars University, which I believe
That's like
is
season 3.
season 2 or 3. So,
Yeah.
any case, so we have all these new characters. We've now got most of the group. We still haven't seen Scruffy, but that's okay. Scruffy will show
I
up
think
with
he's
all of
by
his
far the
greatness.
best character for the company. I love Zoidberg. He's my favorite character, but
Yeah,
I can still say that Scruffy is probably one of the better.
Scruffy has
better one-liners.
so many
Yeah.
great liners. Exactly. He's up there with Professor for one-liners, right? Now, we're leading on here to say their very first delivery. So Leela ends up becoming the captain after not so much of a deliberation from the professor. He just chooses her because she clearly is the best choice for this.
I would love to see a world where the what if Fry became the captain. Would he completely
Very first
take it
time.
way too seriously, and he would just be like the best captain ever? It's like, Leela, we can't kiss now. I'm driving, kind of
Right,
thing.
and she's like super
And
attracted to him.
then like Bender would be like the best coordinator because like Fry would whip him into shape or something like Bender. There's no time to be fooling around. We are gotta
Right.
stay on mission or something like that.
Right.
I just think it would be just so funny just to be like complete 180 on him if he was the captain or something like that. Obviously, I don't think that would do it. He would be the bumbling idiot or something like that, at least in the first while. But
Yes, I think that it
It's a
kind
what
of
if,
shows. Right, it kind of shows the idea of what Fry is to his core. Right, maybe he's a good captain, but then he's always been too childish. Right.
yeah,
So
well, he's
maybe
like in
this
his early
pushes him into
20s,
being
right?
an adult. Yeah, but I mean, like that's the thing.
I think a
Yeah.
lot of people can go say like, "Oh yeah, I was an idiot, a fun idiot in my early 20s.
Sure, my early 20s.
I was a fool," kind of thing. Like, yeah, I didn't have my head on my shoulders, kind of thing.
Yeah,
I'm
I didn't
pretty
know what
sure
I
a lot of
wanted.
us can say that. Yeah.
Well, and you know what? This is something I think we'll come back to, because I think right there, Mitchell, you've hit the theme for what this episode is Fry figuring out what he loves, and then the phoniness of it with going to the moon and all this stuff, which we'll
Yeah.
talk about. But this is kind of the
Theme
of this
park on the
episode,
moon.
him growing up, which we'll get to. Now, I was laughing about this as well. Isn't it funny because in this universe they're still using like cash? But they're still like, so we find out Amy comes from a rich family, and then Bender does this little thing to try and like distract her so his body can steal
look
her
over
wallet.
here. It's me. I'm a talking head because they're all getting preparation to take off. So
Right.
Fry, Leela go to see the doctor, and then Bender gets a tune-up from
Right.
the professor, takes off his
Takes off
head,
his head,
puts
and
the
then
head on the
distracts,
counter. Yeah.
And we learn that his body can do things without the head, which is pretty funny because it uses that a lot in other episodes.
Oh, they use
especially
it a lot, yeah.
yeah. So his body like steals her wallet, takes out the cash, puts it back, does a thumbs up, and then he's like, okay, I'm bored, and then he gets the money. And I just it dawned on me suddenly, like the show was made early 2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s, and it's like cash is still on the mindset of the people 25 years ago, and it's just such a funny.
Had a debit been was debit a thing back then? I know credit cards were.
It was definitely a thing. It was just like not as prominent because it wasn't like the machines and the technology hadn't been like for everyone yet, but it was becoming a thing. So like bank accounts and all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, there's still some very at the time things in this one, and in the next one, I want to actually talk about Wi-Fi and stuff like that for the next.
Right. Yeah, we'll talk about that for the next episode. Exactly. So this is always this kind of thing that just makes me laugh because I'm just looking at this and be like, seriously, you're still using cash, and not even just cash.
I still use cash,
but it's American cash. Like it's like $100 bill. Like it's so funny. Of course, then we later see that cash has been updated with certain presidents and all this kind of stuff.
Oh,
so I think that's pretty.
It funny. Talks to you and stuff like that too.
Right.
This bill is legal tender.
So I do think that this is right. That's right. The Blob was on the money. That's right. I do think they kind of futurify it a little bit or Futuramify it a bit, but it's still kind of funny for cash. So anyway, you're right. So Bender gets a tune up. Fry, of course, has to get like that whole thing. This is when we meet Zoidberg and like the thing like with this clearly not knowing anatomy.
My mother was a saint. Get out. And then, that's the first little bit of Zoidberg you see.
And that's all we get.
I love the fact where where Professor kind of like warns like, hey, he's a little weird, but never mind. It's just that he wears sandals.
Right. Not that he's a giant crab monster. Right. Exactly. So this is like the opening to it. And of course these characters will become classic characters in the show. They'll have their own backgrounds, they'll have their own stories, their own adventures with the crew. So I really like this introduction to them. You see them right in front. They don't tell you.
One of my favorite episodes does have Hermes in it as like a kind of like one of the main characters of that episode.
Oh, of course. Yeah. But some of my favorite episodes, all my favorite episodes have all the main cast part of the episode. They're just funnier that way because they all play off each other so well. Yes. So they get everybody, and then of course it's time to go to their first destination, which of course is the moon. And the moon to Fry is, how would you describe it? Like he loves space. He loves space so much. He's like Markiplier for those people who watch him. He loves space, and it's where he always wanted to go. He wanted to go see the moon and stuff like that. Oh, I wanted to see the moon. I actually did write down on my thing. A certain point in the episode where Fry actually like really talks about how he feels about the moon, because at this point it's a when they go to the moon, there's a theme park. It's just a theme park. That theme parks are a dime a dozen because they all have a like, hey, fun, spend your money, we're fun, hey, right. Yeah, it's the phony realism of it, right? With the theme of the moon, right? Because that's what people in the future think of,
He grew up in the 90s, right, where space travel was what a thought still. A person nowadays is still kind of a thought, but we're still kind of getting there. People can go out in space for a little bit and then come back down if they have $100,000 to give to
whatever
someone.
They can do, right?
Yeah.
And of course with like the whole thing with like Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and like the first steps on the moon, like to
the other
Fry,
guys.
Right. To Fry, these are like the heroes of his time, right? And so for him to be able to do the stuff that those guys did is unbelievable to him, versus Leela, the exact opposite, who thinks it's just a humdum job. Who's not.
She's been to the moon many times. Space,
totally. She comes from there. She thinks she's an
alien.
Space
travel's an everyday thing. Space travel's an everyday thing there.
Exactly.
You can take a taxi to the moon, basically.
Right. And I think it's pinpointed so well when they do this. And Fry's like, "Yeah, can I do the countdown?" Because he's still living in that time. And she's like, 10, "Oh yeah, go knock yourself out."
8. Yeah. Then they just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off.
Yeah. And he has to still complete the whole thing. Right. So they get to that, and he's like, one giant step for man, or one small step for man. And he's like, yeah, one giant line for admission or whatever for the
lineup. Get to the back of the line.
So
there's a theme park on the moon. Yeah, it's
the happiest place orbiting Earth.
Yeah.
And of course, Amy wanted to participate in this because she loves Luna Park. She's one of those people. She's the opposite of Leela. She loves the phoniness. She loves the fun. She likes to play. And Bender
Yeah,
is
she's young.
just
She's like, it's at that college age, right? Which I keep forgetting because like
yeah.
it was so long ago, and I
She's
never really associated her with college age.
well, I think she and Leela are supposed to be roughly in the same age group because they hang out sometimes together. They share things. The Amy does tend to make more jabs at her style, right? Whereas Leela's more about her phoniness, right? This whole perception.
Yeah,
But that's
yeah.
of course that's more of a relationship with those two. Anyway, yeah.
Basically, Leela's around mid-20s, and Leela's mid-20s, and Amy's around early 20s ish.
I would right. Oh no,
Yeah,
no,
because
actually no,
mind you,
no,
she's
no.
doing like a doctorate, and that's why
Exactly. No, I
she's
don't
a
think so. I think she's in her late 20s or mid to late 20s because so Leela is probably around the same age as she is because she's doing the doctorate. And in that
I'm
time,
pretty sure we could Google this, and they'll give us more of
I'm
like
sure,
hey, this is the right thing.
but
I'm not gonna do that because it's just us gabbing about it.
of course, they never name.
I still think early to mid.
Yeah, they never name show the ages of the characters of the show, right? Because it's not useful in a TV show.
Only with the professor in one episode,
right? Which is then like, who cares anyway? They change his age.
Oh yeah, there's a few episodes where they change his age.
Exactly. Now this is great. They show up in here, and this is what I really like. Another thing that really shows how much they cared about this show from the beginning is they set up a continuity thing with Bender and his inability, which is his inability chip and magnets. Whenever he has a magnet there and he wants to be a folk singer, which of course pays off in many, many different episodes as well. Every time he gets hit by a magnet.
He wants to be a folk singer every time, yeah.
Every time, right? And he's singing all these songs.
It would be foolish for a metal man to ever want to sing in a folk band.
Folk music that is all sad, right? So I thought that was really well done, and that's because it again pays off. There's a lot of this stuff that you can see right from the get-go. They had this idea of planting it. Maybe it would go somewhere, and it does, which is really, really nice to see in retrospect. All right. Now, when we continue on here, there is also one other brand new face who will then become kind of a prominent figure in the Futurama set every time they come across him.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I'm still kind of like they just got off the ship, and Bender does what Bender does best. He gets out a beer and takes a drink, and then there's a mascot with the moon face, something like that. It says, "Hey,
she's
I'm
one of
Mooney
them.
the Moon, and I have to confiscate your alcohol. Better mascots than you have tried." And he just finishes it off, and then there's in the face, and then she's like, "Well, at least I got my dignity."
She starts crying. You're right. So
I think they brought this character back once, but I don't know why this character stands out to me so much because in one of the movies where they have like a crowd scene where it basically shows every character that's ever had a line or at least some kind of face in Futurama.
Yeah.
And because it's a mascot with a big giant moon, I always picked up the mascot first. Also, there might be a thing where I had a mascot phobia as a kid too. Maybe, I don't know.
I'm sure you did. Most people, I think, don't really like those. Well, imagine like a giant thing coming at you as a kid with like a giant head, and then they still speak this way, right? But I think the name of this mascot is Crater Face or something.
Crater Face, yes.
Crater Face, and she's and you're right. She does pop up like maybe once. She definitely pops up one more time, maybe two more times, and I think she's always angry or sad every time they come across her, right? It's like she hates her job, yet she's still, you got to do what you got to do type of mentality, right? So she still does it. And I think she was also like some kind of art thing, but we don't really learn about that. Anyways, yes.
Yeah, it was a balloon. It was a balloon. That was the one episode. What episode was that? That was one of the newer ones.
One of the newer ones, yeah. And then she's like, "Oh, this is what like 10 years of an arts degree gets you," and then she starts laughing, and then she starts crying, right? That's later.
And then Bender throws another bottle in the face.
In the eye again, right?
That was a callback to this one. This is the second episode. The fact that they called it back, the second episode,
exactly. That's why it sets up so much
in the game.
And of course,
this character was never really seen other than that, and maybe like a crowd shot.
Exactly. And then who do we see when they show up to do the delivery? The delivery is to
Sal,
S-A-L,
Sal,
who we actually don't learn the name of for a long time either. But yeah, there's Sal, who is, has horrible grammar. the
There's like
gruffly
2
voice.
Sals.
I think there's just the one Sal. Just Sal.
A wise guy. Eh? If I wasn't much of a lazy
I'm just
guy, I'd
so
punch you.
lazy.
But
Yeah.
you are lazy, right? Oh yeah, forget about it.
Don't even get me started. Yeah. So that's great. We introduced the Sal, who we see again multiple times.
Oh yeah,
So-
he's definitely like a background character. Any kind of odd job like crane lifter, garbage truck driver,
Construction.
someone
whatever you
hooting
need.
hooting at
Dumpster.
Leela,
Yeah.
something like that.
Garbage man. Yeah. Anything you need.
Whoa.
Wow. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good thing.
More meat than a cow.
Wonderful Sal. Now we finally get to go into the actual park and we see all these things. So I'll leave it to you now. You can kind of start us off a little bit with this. When you see this park and all the different stuff that we get to see when it relates to the moon.
Like what?
Well, I was going to ask, what was your favorite little attraction that you see in this?
Oh, I know what you
Luna
want
Park?
me to say, but I'm not going to say it because
Of course, you're going to say it.
this is the 90s, right? And
Yeah.
what is it? The skee ball. Skee ball is such a thing for any theme park that you go to. You go to like their little game section. They have oh crap! What I say it was
Skee ball.
skee ball, right? So yeah, they have a skee ball, and then they go over to like the next game thing, and it's virtual skee ball, and it's a guy with a VR helmet on and VR gloves, and then he's pretending to be to skee ball, and then they go over another stall, and then there's Amy
virtual
skee ball, and it's just her with a helmet on sitting on a chair. She's like, wow, it's like I'm playing virtual skee ball.
Which is so silly.
I like that. It's the 90s. Virtual was kind of like a thought. I don't know. Like this is so pre anything, right? Like I remember going to Disney. Well, actually, I guess it might have been in its birth because I went to Disney World in Florida back in 2000 November, so like later on in the year, and my parents, my brother, and I. We did an Aladdin thing, and as soon as I put that VR thing on, I got an instant headache. And I don't ever get headaches. I can't do virtual world. So the fact that like there was a virtual world and then there was just a virtual world is funny to me. But let's face it. The best thing about the theme was we're whalers on the moon. We carry a harpoon, but we didn't see any whales.
So we sing our whaling tune or something, or old style tune. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So going back to that virtual skee ball, because I did actually get this as well, because I thought this was 20 years later, we now have prominent virtual elements
good
in
stuff
our games. Yeah, very, very good, right? So the idea that they have virtual anything, like you can do virtual sword fighting, virtual archery, virtual like even roller coasters, right? This is all stuff you can do from home almost now.
Oh yeah,
the idea
you don't have to leave your place at all to view the world.
Exactly. And now they have like they can have virtual chat rooms of doing all this kind of stuff now. The virtual skee ball is actually kind of
that's still not happening. Like that's all. It was just a helmet. She wasn't wearing any gloves or anything. She was just thinking doing it. But that to me still is super far in the future.
I think it's too much in the past. I think that's why it's in a theme park, because it's old school for them. Because we're already
so
virtual
there's
stuff.
A meta thing. Okay.
Yeah. So I think the idea that, because a theme park, as you know, because we've been to these theme parks, like they have stuff that's kind of new, but it's kind of like this old school kind of new that is kind of older now. So you can kind of enjoy, like roller coasters are very, very old, but they're still fun, right? You can still enjoy it.
There's one at the I don't crap. What's it called? There's one here in Vancouver that's like over 100 years old. I did not feel safe in that thing. Mind you, I'm a tall 6'2" guy, and I swear that my knees were just at the bar. I swear to God, I was gonna fall out if I put my hands up in the air like I didn't care. I would have fallen out and died. So I swear I
freaked out a bit. Yeah?
No, there was a good couple finger dents in the rail there to hand my hands were on it pretty heavily. I was very frightened.
Well, I'm pretty sure.
Sorry,
that's okay.
We're exploring a lot of my childhood fears in this. Mascots,
like I said,
roller coasters.
Like I said,
virtual
the theme of this episode is the idea of growing up, and that is essentially what it is with Fry. So you being like Fry in this situation, like you grow up doing all these kinds of things, but the virtual skee ball stuff, as I was just mentioning, is like reminiscent of something like, oh yeah, wow, it's like I'm playing real virtual skee ball. Oh, that's funny because yes, it's playing on the joke of, we just don't do anything anymore, but that's already happening. So it's kind of like they already knew that was going on. So I thought that was clever for it. Now,
I still
Whalers on the Moon.
we're whalers on the moon.
So how do I kind of thought about this afterwards, and you can tell me what you think, is like, has at this point the Earth's history is so diluted with like knowledge of what's going on that people
they also
honestly
did lose
don't
a lot
know.
too.
Well, exactly. They don't know how the moon landing, something so prominent, actually happened. And so that's kind of in itself very, very sad of it. Like Fry, who is not very smart, by the way, but he loves something, like he loves space, he loves space travel. He knows about these things. He knows how the quotes, he watches the show, he knows about all this stuff. He wants to find the moon landing, he wants to do all this stuff. And yet history, 1,000 years, forgot about a huge, huge undertaking that the human race achieved.
First people on the moon. Yeah,
right.
That's a pretty big achievement, and
right.
I'll say it's one of the things that will probably be put down in history as one of the biggest achievements in human history. I don't know what many other things are. We could probably say, oh, the Great Pyramids, finding a vaccination. Or just the idea for vaccinations and making them more cures, diseases.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's those would be put down, or just maybe just a general thing like, hey, medicine, blank, 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 boom. Those 3 medicines curing cancer might be on there eventually, I would think.
Could be. Some kind of treatment to cure these things could be on.
Whatever, right? Just big things in human history.
Of course, the moon is one of them. Yeah.
The moon would be on there. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the fact that they forget this, so they get their fungineers.
Fungineering degrees. Yes,
fungineering degrees. Yeah, fungineers to come up with this. Now we've lost information, so we got our fungineers to come up with something. I would love to be a fungineer because it's not real. I would love to be it.
Right.
But yeah, the lyrics are, we're whalers on the moon, we carry our harpoon, but there ain't no whales, so we tell tall tales and sing our whaling tune.
There we go.
I love it because Fry even says like, oh, the song's terrible. Well, why don't you get a fungineering degree?
Right. So, well, and it's also as well because Fry, delves off all this, all the phoniness. He hates it. He wants to see the actual moon.
Yeah, the actual moon.
But Leela takes
the thing that he fantasizes about.
Right? Yeah. So Leela takes him on the buggy thing, and then she makes a joke.
Which is an educational thing. They make a joke like it's an educational thing, so no one will be there. The line will be small.
Right.
Yeah. Which is very true because like I think if you were to go to like Disneyland or Disney World, I can't remember which one, there's a couple like presidential things and stuff like that. I think there was Abraham doing his speech or something like that. Those generally have pretty small lines because
typically small
they're historical, they're educational, they're not very fun for kids. You want to go on the Splash Mountain, you want to go to
the teacups.
What was the one I went to?
You want to go to the bumper cars.
Oh God, no.
You want to go to all these
cars.
things. Roller coasters. You want to have fun, right? You don't want to learn. You want to have fun, so to speak, right? Yeah. So that's the idea here. But of course, Fry doesn't see it as learning. He sees it as fun. So I guess that's also kind of plays the theme too. And Leela's just like, whatever. We'll do 10 minutes and then we'll come back and then leave or whatever, right? Well, so they go to this.
You and I are 21st century people.
Of course.
Do you think if we'll say in like within 50 years, if going to the moon becomes like common things, so like we'll say like peasant level thing, whatever, so to speak, Commonwealth thing, would you want to go visit the moon? Like say you could go there for like 2 weeks. It's like they have hotels now,
like a resort. Of course.
Moon resort.
Absolutely.
Really,
I would love to.
Oh God, no! Space scares me. Like it's worse than the ocean because like the ocean, at least I know how to swim. I can float. If you're out in space, you are, excuse my language, for fucked so hard.
But then what about?
There's no lifeline.
But you also take planes, though. If you're in a plane, you're going to get screwed too if it crashes, right? But you take planes. So
yes, I do.
I think it's a similar thing here. So like back in the day, right? If you go from like maybe the 50s,
you're not going to crash because of gravity with a spaceship.
No, you'll burn up and explode, right? This is the idea for that because the oxygen in there.
That is an option.
All this stuff. But this is my point. We'll say the 50 years, and of course this is all hypothetical. I don't know what the technology is going to be like, right? But over the course of history, when they were also introducing planes and such. Like,
Oh yeah,
remember how
lots of
many
crashes.
horrible crashes and bad things happened there
Hindenburg
too.
is a thing too that I think I would associate with that as well.
Right. And don't forget as well, like plane crashes to this day are still not common, but they still happen. So that you
They're
run the
rare.
risk,
Yeah.
you run the risk of this happening for sure. And I think that 50 years from now, we might be at a position where I could be wrong. We might be in a position where we are with planes that we are with flight travel, at
Yeah,
least
teleporters,
to
man.
the moon.
We're gonna get teleporters.
Well, if you want teleporters, then that's a whole other thing. But absolutely, if there was some way for me to get and have a resort stay on the moon where I could see the Earth as like we see the moon, I would
Dude,
be.
that would be pretty cool. I would say
So,
that
I'd be like that too.
view,
Yeah,
that view would be beautiful.
it's absolutely
And then an
majestic.
asteroid would come and the Earth would explode, and you're like, oh no, what do I
I
do?
guess
I'm
we're
on the
stuck
moon.
here. Yeah, but there's so many cool things that come from that. So to answer your question, honestly, I think I would. Again,
Okay.
50 years from now, who knows? But this
Yeah,
is
we'd
the
be in
idea.
our 70s, 80s.
Sure. Yeah. Now, again, that's another thing too, right? What's age going to be like in this time? Because Futurama plays on this, having
Yes.
160-year-olds can kind of still walk around like they're 80. So depends
Or
on your
even 70.
technology, or 70s, right? Now, Fry also does this thing too, and I'm curious to know your knowledge of what's going on. Do you know that thing when they first enter on the bumper on the buggy to get out into the moon, and he's like, "One of these days, Alice, bam, zoom, right to the moon." Do you know where that's from?
The honeymooners, right?
It is the Honeymooners. That's right, and I think that the actor's name is Jackie Gleason. So he was
Yes.
like the TV comedian that Fry mentioned. So then, of course, Leela's like, "Oh, so that's how that happened." And he's like, "What?
No,
Oh, that was wife like abuse." He's talking
that was
about
a
beating
metaphor
his
for
wife.
abusing his wife.
So even Fry, right? He even knows even this amount, but they're using Jackie Gleason, which is like predates
A very dated thing, even for the
super,
90s.
right? Like,
But
like
I think that thing has been referenced like one of these days, pow to the moon or something like that. I can't
yeah,
remember what the actual phrase is, but
pow zoom right to the moon or something. Yeah.
no, that one was I think created for Futurama, but it was like one of these days, straight to the moon. I
Oh,
think
one of these
was what
days. One of these
I
days.
think that was the actual quote.
Right.
I don't. I'm not going to claim I'm right, but I think that's closer to than pow zoom straight to the moon
Oh,
kind of thing.
right.
That
Because
one
they
I
kind of
believe
tweak it. Right.
was
Yeah.
tweaked for Futurama. But when did that come out? That was the Honeymooners was like what, the 60s,
The 60s.
maybe
So it would have been
70s.
around. It would have been around the time that the actual, flight happened, right? For the
Yeah,
moon.
yeah.
So
You know what?
it's kind of
That would make
funny
sense.
that works in the same situation, right? So, but that's the thing. They forget. Here's the reference. They forget about how the actual moon landing happened, yet they still have the memory of that guy saying those words to some extent, and then
Pop culture
that's what they're mixing
survives.
it. Right, exactly. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the joke here. But any case, they continue on there. Fry makes a joke about that, and they continue on, and then they still do like, we're
We're
whalers on the
whalers on
moon.
the moon.
And then the gophers appear, and these gophers, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, these are something to do, they're just like a little nod towards like Disney cuteness,
Theme parks, yeah, and
right?
I like it too because when you first see them, they're like there's like one missing an arm, one's missing an
An
eye, and
eye,
stuff like
like
that.
it's old,
Like I don't recall ever seeing those
right?
at Disney World. Mind you, it's been 20 some years, but
Sure.
we had Chuck E. Cheese growing up. Did you ever go to Chuck E. Cheese?
I No, my family never
No.
went to Chuck E. Cheese. I knew of Chuck
I,
E. Cheese, but I never
yeah,
actually went.
I think I went like maybe 3 times, and this would have been in my very early youth when
Sure.
basically whoever's birthdays it was in like your kindergarten or grade 1 or 2 class, every kid in the class was just invited because it was just it was a social thing. You do have friends and stuff like that, but like you don't have that like that best friend 100% of the time, right? And I'm not speaking
Sure.
for everyone, I'm just kind of speaking from my experience.
Yeah.
Kind of things like, oh yeah, just invite everyone. I unfortunately always had a birthday in the summer, so everyone was always on vacation. So I always had to have it either kind of like at the end of August,
Um,
or I only had like 4 friends show. I think one time I only had one friend showed up, and my mom and dad felt so bad. The thing was, I was like 5 or 4 at the time, and me and that guy had lots of fun. I'm like, I don't really remember being sad, Mom. I just remember having fun playing with Play-Doh. It was
right.
awesome. And she's like, well, okay, I guess that's okay.
That's funny.
So it doesn't, yeah, just one friend is enough to be happy.
Sure.
But yeah, Chuck E. Cheese. I think I went there 4 friends, and I think they had like those stupid robotic crabs. They only had like the very, very slight movement, but I do remember like there was bits and pieces missing, which is I think a nod to like animatronics are crap and they will never be good.
Right. These old school.
Which is
type
why they're always
things, right?
scary, and that's why you can make a couple horror genre games and movies
Yes,
off of them.
yes. We all know Fridays and what is it? Fridays or Freddy's or Freddy's Friday.
I
Whatever.
don't. I never played.
Any case.
But yeah,
now,
sorry, long tangent.
again.
I do that. That's what I do.
That's okay.
I'm called the derailer because I never stay
Shut
on
up.
topic.
You're derailing again. Don't go into another tangent. But any case, the idea of the moon being like this, and so Fry, of course, takes one of the harpoons from the harpooners and basically derails his own. Nice play on there.
Yeah,
derails the buggy onto the moon. And they actually got to drive on the moon, so he gets to experience what it was. Because of course they're wearing like
they're wearing
I should
spacesuits.
say they're wearing spacesuits, and they're not heated either. So they only have a limited time, a limited amount of oxygen, and they just
it's supposed to be for like a 2-3 minute ride about educational whales on the moon.
And of course, you're not supposed to get off the buggy. It's like a normal ride, right?
Yeah.
So they get onto this thing, and then Leela, chastises him for being, a child and saying like, okay, fine, you're gonna get bored. Any case, they finally get through here, and Fry does screw them over and ends up in this weird little,
quicksand
thing on the moon. They get out, but then of course they're going to die because they don't have a lot of oxygen. To which they actually find, and this is kind of funny because this guy kind of shows up sometimes randomly, and of course his family.
Well, before you get to that, I love this thing, like, cause like it's basically kind of like you're in a desert. Basically, it's like, okay, Leela, I'm gonna die. Just leave my body over in that barn there.
Right. Hey, a barn. They find a barn there, whatever. So they go in there. Now, I'm going to go back a little bit. Meanwhile, there's a side thing going on that Amy was left the ship keys, right? Because Leela told her to lock up, but unfortunately she's a bit of a klutz. But it was also the magnet's fault, I guess. She drops the keys into the box that they need to deliver, and then the box is put into the crane toys for the crane game. So Amy and Bender have to try and get the keys back, to which Bender is then seen to be cheating, and he's tossed out of the park, literally onto the moon. And he makes a famous little line here, like, okay, well, I'm going to make my own theme park.
My favorite line.
With poker and hookers.
Oh, no.
I guess we'll forget about the theme park.
No, it's not at all.
It's
not at all. It's blackjack.
What did I say? Oh, poker. Whatever, man. It's the same thing. Whatever.
No, it's not.
Blackjack and hookers. And then he says, forget the theme park. Any case, he's now on the moon. Meanwhile, Leela and Fry are driving around. Okay. So we leave Amy to do this. They end up at this farm, and then we find the old classic old farmer guy from shows, but now he's a farmer who lives on the moon, and I guess his farming is bugalo or oxygen or something. So bugalo, yeah. Which he
has bugalows, which are like giant bugs that have the same kind of pattern as the general dairy cow, the white with black patches.
Right. These at least the moon ones do. We don't know about the Martian ones don't. Or no, the Martian ones do as well, but maybe that's where he got them from, is from Mars.
Yeah. I think so.
So they throw him in here, and then they ask for the oxygen, and the guy's like kind of an ass.
Give it hillbilly.
To them. A hillbilly kind of guy. He's like, you city folk are taking over. You like this area, you have to do chores if you want to make a living. And he says you can take some oxygen if you do some chores at sunup. And of course, the moon is going to take a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah.
So, what do you think of this this old guy who shows up for these?
Well, I just love
classic,
the fact that
he's
a redneck Billy, and then stay away from my beautiful robot daughters.
Right.
Then like the robot daughters say hello to Louis Bell, yoo-hoo, and this is Daisy May something rather.
Whatever.
Yoo-hoo. And then the Crushinator, which is just giant block robot. Yoo-hoo. I just love that.
Like my three beautiful robot dogs. Yeah, Crushinator is like
it's implied that they're not very pretty
for robots.
Yeah, because Fry goes, he shudders.
But of course, who's there that we haven't seen for a little bit?
Bender, because he's a robot, doesn't need oxygen. Robot, so he got thrown out.
Daughters, yeah.
I love it because what's the phrase? Yeah, well, I'm going to build my own theme park with blackjack and hookers. In fact, forget the park. That's the proper phrase.
Yes,
Anyways,
because
he shows up.
you haven't ruined phrases before, Mitchell.
Yeah, I
Anyway,
know, dude. I butcher phrases so bad, but that one I love. So I make sure the
right,
ones
you
I
remember
love,
that.
I get that.
So they're there, they're milking the buggalo, I guess. Literally milking the buggalo, right? Because they're like cows. And Bender's found. He runs into them, and then they escape on yet another buggy. And the Crushinator can apparently turn into a traveling vehicle for the farmer to travel with them, and they start doing them, try to kill them with his little gun there, right? So this is kind of an homage to those old style like Dukes of Hazzard type thing where they're traveling around and somebody's chasing somebody with shotguns in the middle of nowhere countryside stuff. And they get over, and then of course the moon is starting to become darker and darker because it's turning away from the sun, and they have to run away to try and hide. And of course they find the original moon
landing.
which
the
is
original moon landing.
which is really, really neat. So of course, like, Fry's stoked. He's so excited. He runs over and he's like, he sees like their feet. He sees the flag. He sees everything. And then Leela, completely shatters his dream. Just a crater in the sky. There's nothing about it here. Why do you
Big
care
doll
so
rock.
much, right? And then Fry's heartbroken, right? So
Yeah,
there's this.
I really wish I had written down what he said, because like he goes on like a really like and how he feels about the moon and stuff like that. It's a thing you could try and reach out for, but you could never grab because it just wasn't available at the time. Like even now we can't go to the moon, but
It's part of that thing, right? Like,
it's
it used to be this beautiful thing.
It's a
in the
dream
sky.
of his.
Yeah,
It's a dream of his, and then just
yeah,
he wanted her to see what he saw through his eyes, the love for the moon.
exactly. And of course, and he admits, like, he wanted to be an astronaut, but he didn't have the grades. He didn't have there's a joke of the physical thing.
I
And
didn't
he
have
got
the
sick a lot.
grades. Yeah, plus nobody
So
can stand to be around me for more than 20 minutes. And she's like, 20 minutes is a lot.
yeah,
Or whatever the time was.
I think it was like a week or something. But that's the whole point. So she sees this thing through his eyes when she sees Earth through that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so they're able to do this. And then of course, here comes running Bender, right? He had gone back because he wasn't allowed to go in with them.
He wasn't
right?
allowed in, which he also says, fine, I'll get my own moon landing with blackjack and hookers. Forget about the moon landing. Whatever it was.
No, he says, forget about your own moon landing. And I think he says the blackjack. So in the end, he only cares about the hookers.
So yeah, he goes back to the hillbilly's barn.
Yeah, because he wants to find the crush.
Yeah, the Crushinator.
Like, you had to come back.
Bender, you didn't touch the Crushinator, did you? With a girl that fine, you need to be real smooth, Fry.
Real finesse. So here comes Bender, right? He's running away, and of course the farmer this time has, some kind of, I think it's like a harvester of some sort. Like,
it's one of those things you never want to ever. That is a gruesome death, man.
Sure. Well, it's this whole wheel thing to kind of cut the fields, right? Like a big wheel thing.
Combine. It's a combine. That was the word I was looking for. A giant combine harvester. And anyone who knows anything about farming, you do not want to get any kind of arm, leg, animal, any kind of thing stuck.
Yeah. That thing would be horrible for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that thing is just not great.
Sorry, I might cut out, guys. But basically, you don't want to be anywhere near a combine when it's turned on, because that thing is deadly. It has killed people, animals, stuff like that. I think one of my grandparents had a dog who lost a leg or a tail or something like that. Mind you, I was very young, so I don't remember what appendage was gone. But you do not want to mess with combines. They are scary. And the farmer is definitely right, and he's chasing Bender to kill him with this thing, right? So luckily, though, going back to Amy, who has successfully acquired the keys, and she's become a master at the claw game. That she's now rigged the claw game to work with the magnet thing that they were using originally with the crate, in order to get Bender, who is now again connected to the magnet. And he starts singing, she'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. No, that's different. Right. And then they bring it into, they hit the moon landing, and then they essentially steal the moon landing off of there because of the ship, thus getting away from the evil farmer, right? Now, one thing about this farmer I saw as well, which I thought was kind of silly, but it's American, right? Is the farmer is an ass. He has like bad, again,
bad language skills, bad grammar, bad all this stuff. He hates
you're-
everybody,
you're-
hates city
Your
folk,
typical hick farmer.
right? And he also has the Confederate flag, which
He
again,
does?
yeah, on his buggy, he has the Confederate flag on it. Like that's the thing they steal. And so he has like this little thing that's also like predates even the moon landing, yet they still have that in the culture of like, you know, the idea of what that was, and he still uses it. Like the moon will rise again is kind of like on his hat, right? So there's still plays on this, like the southern part is the moon for some reason, right? Or any countryside must be the south type of thing, right? Which is very, very American. But yeah, I guess that kind of wraps it up, and then we finish off with Bender singing "She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain When She Comes,"
Well,
and it even goes into the credits of that too. But yeah,
before like they get saved by the crew and everything and stuff like that. Well, they're kind of reminiscing. Fry, sorry, is reminiscing about the moon kind of thing.
Yeah.
This is kind of where like the first attraction for
Mhm.
Fry and Leela gets. They kind of share a meaningful kind of like
yeah,
time together. It's like, oh wow, I can see the moon. Well, Fry isn't a dumbass.
that's right.
That's
Fry
he's
actually
very
he has a heart, right? He has a big heart. He's
yeah.
actually he's a real person.
He's
kind of thing. So he
poetic.
starts to see him in a different way. Yeah. No, and that's true, and that really starts to come out with this, or at least the elements of it are kind of playing around, right? The chemistry is building, and
Yes.
they have elements of that. So I agree. And it's great that, you know, she doesn't make fun of him for wanting to be an astronaut. She's just like, okay, yeah, like, and then I guess she's displayed sentimental parts of her life too, discussing with him that she, you know, she believes she's an alien, she believes she's an orphan, she believes all these kinds of things, and she's not a happy person either. So they kind of have that oddball connection, and I think that's really good, and that's like the full part of the growing up portion of the theme, I think, of this episode. So I guess that kind of wraps it up for us. So before we finish off, so what would you say? What was your funniest moment that you thought, and the best moment that you thought?
Oh, Whalers on the Moon! Come on,
which one?
Whalers on the Moon. Well, the one where like, hey Bender, it's me. Hey Bender, and then Bender's like, oh god, I went to college with that guy, and he kind of trying to hide it. So like, I don't want to talk to you. I'm pretty sure we've all done that in public. Like, oh crap, there's that guy from
there's
school.
that guy.
I haven't talked to him forever, and he's a chatterbox. I don't know. I would also say getting to meet the other characters too. Getting to meet Hermes, Zoidberg, and Amy, kind of thing. Because they're tertiary characters of the, or secondary, or whatever you want to call them, of the crew.
Yeah.
Right. They're constantly there.
I think they start off as definitely more tertiary, like background stuff, but then they've kind of evolved to secondary over the course of the show, and then of course to more main in the later seasons.
No, it's always the main three, and then I would say the professor's close.
Well, the professor was always a secondary character for sure, and then everybody else was kind of behind. But they grow up into that. I would say, let's see, my funniest one I laughed. I don't know, man. The crater face one always does make me laugh.
I do like that one. I see it.
But then I also did laugh quite a bit at like Sal. Sal is just like, well, what do you like? You are lazy, right? Like, oh, don't even get me started, like, or whatever. It's like, what do I look like? A guy who's not lazy? Like I don't know. It's pretty funny. The Whalers on the Moon.
I like that one because like I don't think there's another callback to that, but just I love like you said, like the moon landing is such a big thing in history that they screwed it up. It's like, yeah, we got our Fungineers to imagine what would happen. Stuff.
Yeah. So I think any of those scenes I think are probably some of the best ones, or the funniest ones. Best one I think is still like inside the moon landing with Fry and Leela having that heart to heart. I think that's one of the best scenes made. Now, who do you think is the MVP, or the most valuable player / character of this episode? Who knocked it out?
I'm probably gonna go with Bender, just because I love that one-liner quote of his with Blackjack and
Hookers. Yeah. Fair enough. I was thinking myself, I'd probably also go with Bender, because he does a lot of great things in this episode. The dancing head, stealing the money, the rigged,
look at me.
Right, the thing with the Crushinator. Like he's probably the MVP of this episode, I would say. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, I guess that's it. Anything else left to throw in for episode 2 of season 1? The series has landed.
No, nothing other than just like this is again the first time where you get to meet the other part of the crews that do become, and minus Scruffy, of course, that do
Yes.
kind of play parts in the rest of the series because
Yeah.
our
We'll have
delivery
more,
company
of
for our
course.
professor of science.
And we'll have more growth amongst these characters in future episodes, right? So yeah, man. I guess until next time, we'll see everybody for episode 3, I Roommate, which will come up soon, and we'll see everything going on. So thanks again for joining me, Mitchell. Have a great day, and
No problem. Thank you.
see you later.
Bye bye.